grandmother of 2 children murdered by a psychopathic criminal has told ITV News she was scared of him and she tried to convince her daughter to leave him. Damien Bendall killed Terri Harris, her 11-year-old daughter Lacey and 13-year-old son John. 11-year-old Connie Gent, who was at the house on a sleepover, was also murdered. Now, a report last week also found that probation failings had allowed Bendall free to kill. Well, now Terri's mother has spoken exclusively to ITV News, saying she believes her daughter was being controlled and subjected to domestic abuse. Angie Smith says something needs to change and she wants to make it easier for family members to get information on partners they suspect of violence. She spoke to our correspondent, Ben Chapman.
I told her I was scared for her. Well, I didn't think this, obviously. How would anyone? No one would ever think this.
In every corner of Angie Smith's living room are reminders of her daughter Terri and her 2 grandchildren, killed in the most horrific way imaginable by Terri's partner, who Angie believes was abusing her for many months before.
We was just a normal family. And if it can happen to us, it can happen to anybody. Yeah.
Terri and her children, John and Lacey, were murdered along with one of Lacey's friends at their home in Killamarsh 16 months ago.
Lacey was a little ray of sunshine, little poser. John was a real mummy's boy, loved his mum. She loved them kids, and them kids were her world. It's just empty now. Everything's empty.
But into their family had come Damien Bendall, who Terri had started a relationship with 18 months before. Angie tells me a conversation about her poorly dog first sounded the alarm.
And then he said, my friend had a dog, and he couldn't afford the vet's bills. So I hit the dog over the head with an house brick. And that was like, that was my real first concern.
You knew, and she knew, Terri knew, that he had a violent past. Why did she stay with him?
She only knew some of it, but then he turned it around to say that, well, that was in my past. I've met you now. I love you. I love the children. And now I will change.
But over several months, it was Terri who changed, despite Angie trying to persuade her to leave him.
She seemed to watch everything she said around him. He was trying to stop her from coming to see us. Her friends were messaging me saying, we don't hear from her anymore, she doesn't speak to us anymore. My girl was not my girl anymore. He was controlling her.
What they didn't know was that Bendall had been accused of domestic abuse before by a former partner, but he was allowed to continue living at the house even when he was convicted of arson. A report last week found probation officers who should have spotted the risk failed to protect the family.
Do you feel like this whole thing could have been prevented?
Of course he could have, yeah. She wasn't even consulted whether he was allowed to be bailed at her address. Was she just waiting for that one moment to say, no, this person ain't who I thought he was? But that never came, did it? So many people's lives are wrecked just because someone couldn't do their job properly.
In the weeks before the murders, Angie considered asking police for information about Bendall's past under domestic violence legislation known as Clare's Law, but she was worried he'd find out. Now she's launched a campaign called Terri's Fight and a petition calling for it to be easier for concerned loved ones to find out about potentially abusive partners.
Just someone that was really concerned for a sister, a daughter, if they could get the information. And also, if people have committed crimes that are violent, that should be there as well.
But above all, she wants to help other women and relatives to recognise the danger signs before it's too late.
My daughter was the 80th person to be killed in 2021 by a violent partner. We can't keep losing that kind of amount of women every year to domestic violence. This is our love for her, and if we can extend that and help anybody else to get out of an abusive relationship, then we've achieved something out of this mess.